Welcome to The Truth About, a podcast where we cut the bull crap and get to the truth so that we can live our best lives. I'm Dr. Monteroso, and today we are going to explore the truth about failure. So I got a chance to do a podcast, if you scroll on down, that was the truth about success. And there's a space where we're debunking the ideas of success, and it's something that we have to reach and something we have to get to, and this expectation that we have, and how often we feel like failures when we're going towards our goals more than feeling successful. And I started talking to my husband, and I realized that we also needed to talk about the truth about failure. There was a basketball player who got asked a question during the interview, like after the basketball game. Baseball game, what's wrong with me? After the basketball game, that he got asked, so did you feel like this season was a failure? Let's take a look.
You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not. Some days it's your turn, some days it's not your turn. And that's what sports is about. You don't always win. Some other people's going to win. And this year, somebody else is going to win. Simple as that. We're going to come back next year, try to be better, try to build good habits, try to play better, not have a 10-day stretch with playing bad basketball. And hopefully we can win a championship. So 50 years from 1971 to 2021 that we didn't win a championship, it was 50 years of failures? No, it was not. It was steps to it, and we were able to win one. Hopefully we can win another one.
How powerful is that? He's frustrated because, they're asking him, well, did everything you do you consider it a failure, right? In the moment where you're feeling something, where you're disappointed in yourself, really it's connecting everything that you've done and saying, well, is that a failure? And I think we can all align with that so much. And there's so much disappointment that we feel in the process of moving to success. And it's really forcing us to take a look at what is failure. You're not always going to win. That's just the reality. We're going to win some and we're going to lose some is what he says, right? And that if through the time that I've been in basketball and I win 3 championships out of, 7 years, am I a failure? Was Michael Jordan a failure? And it really puts into perspective that we're allowed to not win, but at the same time, we don't have to be failures. Failure and failing are 2 different things. And I think we have to start seeing it in that way in order to help our perspective and allow us the opportunity to, kind of like we were talking about in the other podcast, absorb success and have the ability to experience success instead of chasing towards this place that doesn't really exist. And so if we look at failure is terminal. It's the end. You didn't do it. It's over. There's no more shots that you can take. And that means we're done. There's no more lives in the game, right? There's no more opportunities and no more chances. And that's not always the case when we're failing. So when we look at the times that we are failing, we're really looking at failing as a part of the process of success. It's something you will run into when you're moving towards goals and moving towards things that you want to be successful in. So failure is also a space that is more personal, right? You didn't meet something and you have this space of disappointment for it. It's a moment that you wanted or an experience that you wanted and it didn't come to fruition. And so we're experiencing disappointment, which often comes in a space of grief as well. We're grieving something we weren't able to achieve or something that we've wanted and we weren't able to get it in that moment. But when we look at failing and when we look at failure, failing is a process. Failure is terminal. So looking at them different, I can even look at the space where we say, oh, such a failure. Our bodies, our minds, that absorbs it and says, well, this is terminal. It's time to grieve something that is terminal and not going to come back, an opportunity that's not going to come back. And we get that feeling just as if it was that situation where we really did have a moment of failure and the opportunity is gone. But all of our failing moments in that process of failing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's terminal. It doesn't mean that we have to grieve it in that way. Yes, we still grieve, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the way that it would be if it was failure. When we look at that, there's no hope alive in that moment. And that's really frustrating for us as people that are trying to strive towards new and different things. So it's also frustrating because it's mostly not true. Listen, if you need to accept something, great, right? Better. Grieve it. Like I was just mentioning, do what you need to do in order to get through that process. But you have to remember that when you're a failure, it's over. Failing still gives you an opportunity, and there's still an opportunity for something to end good. So what are things that we could be failing at in our lives that we don't necessarily have to beat ourselves up for because it's not terminal? So I could be failing at being fit, working out, right? In that moment, in that day, maybe I didn't do it, or I'm not moving in the direction that I want to do. And I'm constantly, not meeting that expectation. But it's not something that I can't do tomorrow. I still have options in that way. You can fail at building better habits, right? If you want to build habits in your life and, building habits and doing the things that you need to do, then you can fail at that each day and not move in that direction. You can fail at studying more, right? Making sure that you're spending your time wisely when you are doing your studies, and, the day passes and before you know it, you haven't read what you needed to read and you just kind of feel like caca. And in that moment we failed and we didn't do what was expected of ourselves. And so we feel bad and disappointed, which allows us the opportunity to do it again tomorrow and fulfill that space. We could be failing at starting that company that's in the back of your head, that desire to be an entrepreneur that some of you guys might have. Every day that we don't move towards it, we do fail. We're not in motion. Failing is a space of not being in motion in a direction that you hope for. So it's not the one that society says. It's not the one that your mom says. It's not the one that your dad says. It's the path that you've created, that you've desired and that you've wanted, and not walking through that. And that's moments where we are failing, and that's okay to fail. It's okay to experience and acknowledge those spaces of failure because it's inevitable. We're going to fail. But it's how long you choose to fail that will really influence what you're capable of doing and also your confidence. So fine. You're failing. So what, right? What do we want to do with that feeling that we have? And I think that in order for us to use moments where we do feel like we're failing, I think we have to understand the value first of failing, the value that comes when we are in spaces of failing as we move towards our goals. So first, we have to understand, why is failing inevitable? Why are we all having to experience it at some point or another while we're moving towards moments that we want to be proud of? And it's because it's a part of the steps. It's not all of the steps, right? It's filled alongside with the ideas of building and discovering and trying. And in that process is also failing. And it's a part of a place, and it's a stepping stone that is inevitable in order to allow us to build and allow us to discover and allow us to try. And if we try and it doesn't work, then there's that experience of failing, right? But that failing inevitably gives us an opportunity to learn, which encourages us to discover more. And it's a process that happens till we get to that moment of success and that proud moment that we have of each other or of ourselves when we've reached something. The second thing is that failure is the natural yin and yang to success. Even the fear or the threat of failing helps us move towards success. Have you ever thought of that? That worry that we have, that anxiety, right? The anxiety we're always trying to get rid of is actually trying to help us to be successful. And it's trying to help us to remember that we want to be successful, and that fear stops us from not getting up, not going to study, right? And it pushes us in that direction. And without the concept of failure, it's really hard to come up with the concept of success. So if we took out all failure, if we took out all failing, then do we truly understand and are able to experience success and the proud moment that we get to experience when we feel successful? It's as if we had happiness, and it's hard to know what happiness is without all the other negative emotions that allow us to appreciate happy moments with those we love and with ourselves. Failing is one of the best teachers. It gives us the opportunity where we can learn from acknowledged failing. And acknowledged moments of failings is where we see, oh, this is where I didn't step. This is where I messed up. This is what I should have done a little bit different. Sometimes when we think we have to study and then the test comes, or we don't think we have to study, we know we have to study, and the test comes and we don't get that grade because maybe we had a little bit of overconfidence and we thought we could do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great skill and a great opportunity. But sometimes we get smacked back into reality, which is that, maybe college is harder than we thought, or graduate programs are harder than we thought, or high school AP classes are harder than we thought. And so it puts us back into perspective when we give ourselves the opportunity to acknowledge the failing instead of running from that. It gives us spaces of direction, boundaries, weaknesses, shortcomings, and the gaps in knowledge that we might have. It gives us the ideas of ability and even proper techniques that we get a chance to really learn when we acknowledge failure, right? That's so many things that are necessary to allow us the opportunity to move towards successful moments. And if we don't acknowledge our failing, we run from it, right? We complain about it. We, say, woe is me, and look at all these things, and I'm the worst person ever, just so that we can hear, no, you're amazing, stop it. Don't get me wrong, I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it. It's just the natural space that we sometimes do. When we get a chance to acknowledge our failings, the things that will inevitably come in our lives, then we give ourselves the opportunity to obtain all of these things, right? Looking the direction, boundary, weakness, shortcomings, gap in knowledge, like all of these things are so important for us to get to that successful moment. If you don't acknowledge the moment that you might be failing, then you lose an opportunity to absorb so much that can help you move towards those successful moments, as we just saw. There's so much that we are capable of absorbing when we allow ourselves to acknowledge that failing and use it as an opportunity so that we can learn and we can obtain and we can create and we can discover so that we can be successful, or better said, experience success. So when we look at a failing, whatever it may be, we don't want to sit and complain and just blame. It removes my influence when I complain or I'm blaming other people. Now I've taken away my ability because I said, oh, it's the universe's fault. I always have such bad luck. It's their fault. They didn't do X, Y, Z. They're always so mean, and I just had to do whatever. I didn't want to go in that room because they bothered. Whatever the case is that stops you. Sometimes complaining and blaming and all that, it feels good. Let's be honest, right? It takes away the responsibility. But when you take away the responsibility, you're also taking away your influence. And that means you're also taking away your power and your ability in that space. So it doesn't mean don't feel bothered by others. It doesn't mean don't understand other people's influence to you as a person. But it really means, what are you going to do with that frustration? What are you going to do with that disappointment? What are you going to allow yourself to experience? How are you going to allow yourself to use it instead of just complaining about the situation? So once we're done complaining, you call your best friend, right? And you say, oh, this is horrible. I'm so mad by this. Da, 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 da. And then you hang up and we say, okay, now what are we going to take from this? What are we going to do with this? Where are we going with this? How do I make sure this crap doesn't happen again? And then once that's done, you go, you cry again, right? You deal with the emotions that have, that come with the failings, because the emotions are trying to teach us something. They're trying to help us focus so that we can see, hey, don't do this crap again. So looking at the truth about failure, we find a few things, right? Failing is inevitable. Failing is the yin and yang to success. Failing is our greatest teacher if we allow it to be. And there's a sweet taste when you get to that proud moment and you look back at all the moments where you feel you have failed, and you realize that you are not a failure, that you got here, that moment was not terminal, and you did it. And you get to absorb that so much better when you know you've triumphed over something really difficult, or you've triumphed over your own weaknesses, or you've filled in the gaps in the places that you didn't see before, and now your foundation is stronger. So failing is a beautiful thing if you allow it to. That doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that you should experience it and go find it. Life will bring that to you if you are moving towards something. But once the feelings are gone, right? Once you've let them out and you've given your chance to experience all of that, then use it. Because if you do, then you're using life's greatest tool, right? One of life's, right? Because there's so many things that bring us to success and achievements and stuff. But one of the main things that brings us over there, because it provides us so much, right, in that moment, is our failing times. But that doesn't mean you're a failure. Thank you for joining me. This is the truth about failure. I'll see you soon.